be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
We're back here on Tiger Rag Radio. Jeff Palermo, along with the executive editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Todd Horne, and the editor, Glenn Guilbeau. Joining us now, it's LSU pitching coach Nate Yeskie joining us on this winter wonderland of a day in Louisiana. Coach Yeskie, thanks a lot for your time today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great to be here.
Well, Coach Yeskie, second year as the pitching coach for the Tigers. First of all, just some general thoughts of what you're seeing from the pitchers in particular here as they get ready for the 2025 campaign.
Yeah, I think there's some excitement, obviously, around the season. Everybody is always looking forward to opening day, certainly under today's circumstances for sure. But, the group is coming together pretty well. I think they enjoy spending time with each other. We're making some good strides, turning the corner, coming on to the fall with some development things, both on the mental side of things as well as just the pitch development. And I think every pitcher across the board, I had some conversation with Kevin Gossman last week of what he would like to do better going into this season. And he says, command my stuff better. So if a guy who's had quite a good career, both collegiately and professionally, is saying that, and that aligns with our thought process, and I think we're on the right road for what we're trying to do.
Hey, Nate, this is Glenn Guilbeau. Thanks for joining us. All I can think of is being in Alex box when it's 98 degrees. That'll happen soon. But let me ask you, Cade Anderson, Anthony Ianson, Chase Shores are among the favorites to be the weekend rotation, but you're going to have some very good pitchers, Connor Ware, William Schmidt, Kason Evans, Cowan, that might not be starting on the weekend. How competitive is it for those three spots, and how much depth do you feel like you have?
Well, I think it's real competitive. I like our depth from an ability standpoint. The one thing that this staff doesn't possess, maybe as much as others have in the past, is just miles on the tires. When you're looking at the experience, Cade Anderson has more innings than Chase Shores from a collegiate standpoint. And Chase has been here for an extra year dealing with his injury and getting himself back, but he's certainly accelerated a lot of things on his behalf, which will benefit him just from staying tuned in to the days that not only he's putting in his work, but watching other guys go about their business. So, between Cade and Anthony, you mentioned some others with Chase and Zach and Connor Ware. We like those arms. And when you start sprinkling in the freshmen, those are guys that are going to throw some impactful innings for us. How much? We tend not to really look at what year they are in school. We do take that into consideration because sometimes it's a little different when they step out in Alex box for the first time. I know even last year, Luke Holman had pitched in conference play before, but the home opener against Florida, you could feel the energy. It was a little different. And when you're certainly throwing the ball as well as he was that night, I asked him afterwards what that felt like. He says, Coach, that's been different than anything else up to this point this year.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned Connor Ware, and you talked about miles on the wheels, so to speak, or miles on the tires. Supposedly, according to Jay, had the top performance in the fall. And I understand you're looking at him as a closer and a potential starter right now. But how do you speak to his inexperience at this level of ball?
Well, it's just different when you're taking into account some of these kids, whether they played at a high school or a junior college, they may not have had as many fans at their games all year as we'll have at one Friday night or Saturday game at the box. So that's a different element. It's not something you can necessarily prepare for. You try to do as many things as you can to keep them focused on the task at hand, whether that be executing a pitch or picking over to first or executing a bunt defense. A lot of those things are different for each kid and how they process it. So we just try to stay focused on where our feet are, the things that we can control, and how we can best impact the game relative to those things. And, hopefully guys like Connor and some of the other newcomers will be able to turn that corner pretty quick.
What has impressed you most about Connor and his skills and ability?
I think just his consistency. I think that he comes to the yard every day with the same idea and understanding that he's there to get better, even if it's not a day that he's throwing a bullpen or a day that he's going to be able to compete in an inter squad. It's just he sets his clock. He shows up to work. I do think his brother, having played, has given him some added insight into what to expect and how to navigate certain things. So that's been helpful. But and I would give credit to Kate Anderson and some of the other returners for just establishing what the expectations are, what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So they're all kind of pulling on the same rope, as Skip would say. And I like them as a group just because I think their focus and their attention to detail seems to be pretty consistent across the board.
And Nate, you're the first pitching coach Jay Johnson's had for more than one season. From your perspective, how does that help you, particularly with the pitchers that's you had last year as well?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge for any young man when it's year one, just because when it's something new. And for some of those kids last year, it was I believe the third guy in 3 years, and might have been a challenge. Sometimes that's the way that it is in professional baseball. Sometimes you're dealt a new hand, but it's good for them just because I think when you're talking about a system and be almost like a quarterback that has the same offensive coordinator for a few years, where they know the verbiage, they know the understanding, they're able to kind of help navigate some of those things where I might be talking to somebody during a practice and one of the older guys can pull somebody aside that had just done something before I get a chance to get to them and say, hey, you know what, we might do this a little bit differently. Remember, this is how we want to field this bunt or what we're looking for in a bunt situation. So, it helps the process, I think, speed up a little bit more. And it's certainly enjoyable for me being able to spend time with kids like that, as well as the newcomers, and, kind of help clear a path for their future.
Nate, we touched on the weather today. It's between 6 and 8, maybe 10 inches of snow in Baton Rouge. That's certainly not something you account for at any time here in Baton Rouge or predict. How's it affecting your preparation schedule right now?
Not particularly, just because having been in the Northwest and kind of dealing with some of the elements there, we've always kind of tried to stay out ahead of it. So we build in our schedule accordingly, taking into account for you might run into rain, you might run into something that, maybe a kid's got an illness or has to step away for a family function. So we build in some days to give us a buffer to be able to kind of roll them back. Now, if you got something planned for today, it would certainly be nice to do it from a team standpoint. But I know from the pitching side of things, we've tried to take into account these types of off days, if you will, and build them into our system. So I think the kids came back in pretty good shape. It's the one thing that I always scratch my head about with our sport and the NCAA is that we're turning kids loose to go home for Christmas break. You can't work with them until a certain day when they come back, and often that's 2 to 3, in some cases 4 weeks before the season starts. And when you're talking about the pitching side of things, you want to make sure that the health of those guys is there. So it's nice to be able to count on an older group of kids who have been with me to get those messages across for those kids to understand this is what we should be doing when we get home, because when we get back, it's going to pick up pretty quick.
Can you talk to us a little bit about Gavin Guidry and what you look for his role to be?
I think his role is the same as really kind of anybody else's, and that's the role that they carve out for themselves. I think anytime you're looking at a starting pitcher, which most kids want to be, can you throw multiple pitches for strikes? Can you control the run game? Can you hold your stuff, through 95 or 100 pitches? A lot of times, and I've had guys in the past where, Coach, I'd really like to start, and we're open to any and all options. And some of those guys' stuff would kind of peter off after 30, 40 pitches, and until we were able to build up their endurance in a better sense or get their strength levels up, they weren't at their best, and they certainly weren't going to help the team the most. And the interesting part is, and you can go back to the year that Paul was here, I think maybe he had one complete game, possibly two. Last year, I think we had a 7-inning one, maybe at Missouri. You just don't see the complete game that often anymore. So try not to look at it in who's starting or who's relieving. We're just looking at it as, all right, who's going to come in and get outs and get them for as long as you can. And Gavin has certainly done a good job throughout the fall of extending himself and creating more opportunities. So I'm curious to see how that's going to continue to unfold for him.
Well, if I can pin you down, Nate, if you were playing this weekend, who you think would be your starting rotation?
You know, I think that
Sorry.
I think I get it, and I think you look at we haven't even dove into our opponent that much yet to be able to answer that question accurately. Just because I think sometimes you want to give your personnel as well as your team the best opportunity to succeed. I don't know how right-handed or left-handed they are. I don't know how much they like to run, and I think anytime that you can take away things that a team likes to do, you can certainly change that. So, you know, we'll see how guys continue to unfold here and with the work that they put in. Again, because nobody's going to go particularly deep, I would imagine, the first week. It would be nice to have about 6 starters and let them all just chop the game up and insert the other guys where you can.
Coach Yeskie, thanks a lot for your time. We really appreciate it. We'll certainly look forward to having you on the show as the season goes along. Stay warm out there, okay?
Yeah, you too. Thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm Mike Munderland, and we're here to smash the capital city's trash.
Smash My Trash is a revolutionary compactor for large dumpsters, sometimes reducing the volume of waste by up to 70%. This means fewer hauls per month and big savings for your business. Fewer hauls and compacted waste will also result in a positive impact on our community and our environment by taking up less space in our local landfill sites. Schedule your company's free demo today. Call 225-497-0101.
We started the show with a good conversation with LSU pitching coach Nate Yeskie, and joining me back on the Max Home Hotline, it's Tiger Rag editor Glenn Guilbeau. And Glenn, one of the questions you asked Nate Yeskie, you were trying, I give you a lot of credit, you were trying to get the weekend rotation out of him. You're trying to see if he can't give you a nugget on that. But obviously there's a lot of competition there. I mean, Cade Anderson, Chase Shores, the Ianson kid from San Diego. So, and then there's other guys there that could potentially. And what's crazy about baseball, Glenn, is, and you can look at it, this happens on every level. Whatever that is, that starting lineup or whatever that initial weekend rotation is, it is nearly completely different by the end of the season. Right? You know, like Paxton Kling, everybody last year thought Paxton Kling is your starting center fielder from, you know, game 1 all the way through 56, all the way to another run to Omaha. And then obviously things change. So it's hard. Injuries come, slumps come, but it seems this season, especially on the pitching staff side, there's a lot of talent there. And it's going to be up to Nate Yeskie and Jay Johnson to figure out who needs to pitch where and make sure that you don't have what you've had the last couple of years at LSU. When the middle of April comes around, you got 3 guys that you can really count on, and then the rest, you don't know what you're getting half the time. And I understand it's college baseball, not pros, where there's the level of consistency is much higher, but still a lot more depth here, and hopefully LSU doesn't have some of the issues on the mound that they've had over the last few years.
Yeah, Jay gave me a much better answer a week or so ago than the pitching coach did. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be, according to Jay, right now, Cade Anderson, the left-hander, sophomore, is the Friday night guy. And then either Anthony Ianson, right-hander transfer from UC San Diego, or Chase Shores, right-hander who was supposed to be in the rotation in 23, really one of the top recruits of that year. He's going to be either the second day or third day with Ianson in the other one. And then also Connor Ware is if he doesn't make the rotation, he'll be like the closer. You know, Jay sees it as 4 guys, and he likes that group because Connor Ware is a lefty, Cade Anderson is a lefty, and as he said, 2 lefties, 2 righties, all 4 are old. But you know, there's some other guys that could jump in there. You know, Zach Cowens, the right-hander from Woolford, who transferred in, but Jay really likes the freshman from Catholic High, William Schmidt, right-hander. Who was 9-0 last year for the state champion Bears, and right-hander Cason Evans from Houston. Both of those guys are freshmen, and he says those 2 guys could be number 1 top 15 number one picks in 2027. He says they're eventually going to, be the guy at LSU. Maybe not this year, but he sees those two guys maybe as a midweek starter, also key relief. And then while he was talking to Todd and I, Todd brought up Jacob Myers, the Nichols transfer, and Jay was like, "Oh yeah, he's good too." It's
Right,
almost like he doesn't remember all his players. And at one point, Jay was talking about his outfield. He says he's got some issues in the outfield because he's got 7 or 8 guys that he can play interchangeably. Now the starter's likely going to be the transfer from Auburn in center field. Chris Stanfield is probably going to be the center fielder, but then he may start a freshman, Derek Carriel, who's from Los Angeles, in left field, and then the right fielder would be Jake Brown, who played a lot late last season. But they just, I know it's on paper, and you're right. Every now and then there's a couple of guys that just don't pan out, but this team looks really loaded.
Yeah, they certainly do. They certainly do. I'm interested to see what Chase Shores is able to do this season, because I remember when he got hurt, and this is you don't want to, because Paul Skeens is a unicorn, right? But Jay Johnson kind of used Chase Shores' name in that Paul Skeens stratosphere, right? In the sense of like, hey, this guy was supposed to be as dominant as Skeens, and they lost him to that.
Right.
And that was during the national championship season, but he couldn't pitch at all last year because he was still recovering from Tommy John. So I'm eager to see what he could do, along with William Schmidt. How much the guy was so dominant on the high school level, how much of can he make the jump and be just as, not to say just as good on the college level, but could he be very effective on the college level too? Yeah,
and what's so good is, in the past, maybe before Jay, William Schmidt would be in the weekend rotation right off and wouldn't have a cushion. He has the cushion of being able to start some midweek games and come in on relief in the weekend, because you got these studs ahead of them, and then they can develop. And we also haven't mentioned some of the other pitchers.
Well, let's take a break. Let's take a break, and we'll talk a little bit about them.
Joining the Army is more than a chance to serve your country. It's also a great career move.
All my personal experience, I've been able to build upon that so that I could achieve construction management and training, go for a project manager planner. So when I get out of the military, I'm able to pursue a career in construction management.
Get the experience you need through service in the United States Army.
Tiger Rag editor Glenn Guilbeau on the line with me once again here on the Max Home Hotline. Plenty of other pitchers we mentioned, a half a dozen, 6, 8, 7, 8, 9 guys that certainly can have an impact on this 2025 team. One guy I wanted to get your thoughts on, Glenn, is Gavin Guidry. You asked him the question. I think you asked him the question. It was either you or Todd right at the end of our interview with Nate. And it sounds like, he didn't say that he's going to be in the weekend rotation, but it sounds like they're going to give him an opportunity to see if he could pitch multiple innings, and it's not a sure thing that he'll be the closer. Now, it's also possible that he's just a 2-pitch pitcher and his best role on this team is in the 8th and 9th innings, but it sounds like they're going to give him an extended look to see if he can go out there and maybe give you 3, 4, 5 innings or so here or there.
Yeah, well, he was really impressive last year in pressure situations, and he would be a perfect setup guy, middle relief, midweek starter. He could start on a weekend in a pinch, but I don't think he's going to be in the weekend rotation once the SEC comes around. But guys like that, extend you in the postseason. LSU was about a pitcher short last year in North Carolina, at North Carolina, when they lost that game in 10 innings. They had shot all their bullets, really, and they had been overextending themselves to get to that point. So I don't think they're going to have that issue this season. They got a lot of pitching depth, and it's great that they finally have a pitching coach like Nate, who's in his second year. So he really knows those players, and they're going to have a lot of options pitching wise. And, you know, they got a few left-handers in there. And you know, that's the other key thing about this team. Jay's made a point of mentioning a couple of times that they were right-handed weak last year. You know, they had too many right-handed hitters. You know, they got quite a few lefties they can throw at you this year. Stephen Millam is a switch hitter, and then Jake Brown is a left-handed hitter. The freshman left fielder I mentioned, Derek Curiel, he's a left-hander. So this team's got a little bit of everything. They really do.
We'll see how much power they have. We know that they're going to get it out of their big first baseman and Jared Jones, but where else are they going to get it is a question in my mind at this point.
Right. Yeah, Jared had 28 home runs last year. The Indiana State catcher,
right,
Luis Hernandez, hit 23 home runs last year, but again, and 76 RBIs, hit 359. But you know, that's Indiana State, so we'll see how he transfers into SEC baseball. That's going to be interesting to watch. And they got a great freshman catcher coming in as well, Cade Arambai.
Yes,
who's like the top catcher in the country. You know, so I mean, just the recruiting and transfers on this team is really impressive.
And where do guys like Josh Pearson and Ashton Larson fit in as well?
Yeah, those are two of the guys in the 8-man outfield that Jay was talking about that he can use interchangeably. So it's going to be fun watching the non-conference season just to see how he mixes and matches.
Glenn, we got to go. That does it for the show. Well, hopefully next week it'll be 65 degrees outside and we all can be together once again.
It's time to start betting on yourself. Louisiana 988 can help if you're dealing with tough emotions caused by gambling habits. You can share as much or as little as you want, and it's completely confidential. It's free, available 24/7, and most people who reach out report feeling better right in the moment. Call or text 988 anytime.
Are you ready for the East Baton Rouge Parish Library in 2025? The library is ready for you. You'll have 3 opportunities to meet President Abraham Lincoln in January. The legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. will be presented at the Baker Branch. And if you've been researching your family's history, join us for the Genealogy Brown Bag Lunch. Find out more details about these programs and more at ebrpl.com.